Hey guys, tonight we thread ourselves quietly into a dusty little village in ancient Lydia, where the air smells faintly of sheep wool and olive oil, and one teenage girl sits at her loom, spinning thread like it's a sacred ritual. Which, in a way, it kind of is. Her fingers flick through the threads so quickly that you can barely see what she's doing. A shuttle slides in and out, the rhythm slow and sleepy like a lullaby. She hums something tuneless, maybe about goats. She has no idea a goddess is about to take personal offense to her entire existence. The girl's name is Arachne, and she's very, very good at weaving, like jaw droppingly, annoy your neighbors good. But here's the thing, in the ancient world, being really good at something was often the quickest way to become a cautionary tale. You probably won't survive this myth unless you've got divine backup, or at least know how to dodge lightning bolts and wrathful glares. Arachne, she's got none of that. Just a loom, a mouth, and a whole lot of opinions. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing where this sleepy little history club is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself sitting on a woven mat, maybe a little itchy, next to a clay house with vines creeping up its side. A goat bleats in the distance. Not dramatically, just a bored meh, which is honestly the general vibe of the whole village. Life here moves like honey. People dye wool with crushed berries, pound grain into flour, and argue about which god is in charge of weather this week. But one house is different. Inside, Arachne's loom creaks as she works. Her mother, a kind but slightly overbearing woman named Idmon, once taught her how to weave. The villagers still talk about that, how young Arachne picked it up faster than anyone else, and then, somehow, surpassed everyone. The weird part? She never married, not even a flirtation. The loom, it seems, was her true love. That's not super rare in myths. Sometimes a person's obsession is what the gods notice most. And here, in this forgotten little village where nothing big ever happens, people start to talk. It's not malicious at first, just curiosity. Did you see what she made? That wolf's fur looked real, like actually real. Someone else chimes in, I heard she wove an entire vineyard, grapes and all. No, seriously, she's better than human. Maybe, better than divine? Oops, that's the phrase that tips the first domino. Better than divine. Now let's be honest. In the ancient Greek world, comparing yourself to the gods was a hobby people had. But it was a risky one. You might as well build a statue with a sign that says, Hey Zeus, insult me! And then wonder why you got turned into a tree or a constellation or a weird sea sponge. Historians still argue whether Arachne was ever truly arrogant or if her story was crafted to warn young women not to be too good, too clever, or too independent. After all, weaving wasn't just art. It was a woman's duty. Spinning was considered a sacred act, tied to the fates and domestic virtue. So a girl weaving for power? For pride? That sends a message ancient Athens wouldn't necessarily approve of. Still, Arachne just keeps weaving. Every day. Her fingers know the patterns by heart. Stars, animals, waves, flowers, entire myths stitched into soft cloth. You watch her work, and honestly, it's kind of mesmerizing. Her eyes narrow in focus, brow furrowed, her lips moving like she's whispering instructions to the thread itself. Then, one day, a traveler visits the village. An old woman in a heavy cloak with a hunched back and sandals so dusty they look like they were stitched from road itself. She watches Arachne silently for a long time, and you feel it. That strange tension, like someone left the oven on in Olympus. But we'll get to that later. Right now, Arachne is still just a girl with talent, trapped in a world where too much excellence is suspicious, especially if you're not humble about it. And spoiler alert, Arachne, not particularly humble. Not in a mean way, just confident, maybe even charmingly smug. I taught myself, she'll tell anyone who asks. No goddess ever touched my loom. And honestly, she believes it. Of course, there's a twist. There's always a twist. The funny thing is, weaving wasn't just a craft. It was how people told stories before writing was a big deal. A woven cloak might show your entire family history. A temple wall hanging could reveal myths, warnings, or political messages. It's the ancient version of Twitter threads, literally, just warmer and itchier. And the gods? They watched everything. Always. Not in a creepy big brother way. Well, sometimes that too. But in that mythic, omniscient, we see your pride from Mount Olympus kind of way. Athena, especially, was known to be a bit sensitive. She was the goddess of wisdom, war, strategy, and crafts, including weaving. So Arachne's boast wasn't just offensive, it was personal. Still, Arachne continues to spin. The wool glides through her fingers. A new tapestry begins to form. This one, it looks suspiciously like it's portraying the gods in a less than flattering light. You notice Zeus in one corner, chasing yet another maiden, and Hera looking miffed as usual. There's Dionysus with grapes, predictably tipsy. And somewhere in the center, Athena herself, slightly cross-eyed, holding a shield too large for her. Is this artistic freedom, or a slow-motion divine insult? Hard to say. One thing's clear, though. When you live in a myth, subtlety is not your friend. And Arachne's threads, they're starting to tighten into a web of consequences. So, who even is Athena, honestly? You've definitely heard her name, probably from that time you pretended to pay attention in world history class while secretly doodling battle axes in the margins. But let's be real. Athena isn't just another toga-wearing celestial celebrity. She's a walking paradox. The goddess of wisdom and strategy, yes, but also the goddess of war, olive oil, heroic pep talks, and, oddly enough, artisanal weaving. Imagine a cross between your no-nonsense debate coach and an intimidating Etsy seller with a killer spear collection. You're sitting somewhere cool and breezy, maybe atop a marble step on Mount Olympus itself, just outside the god's social club. Birds chirp faintly, and a nymph waves to you in passing, trailing sparkles. Inside, Athena's having none of it. Her armor gleams. Her expression says, "Try me." And you don't. Because even Zeus, king of the gods, gives her side-eye when she gets that look. Born fully grown from Zeus's forehead, yes, you heard that right, Athena skipped the whole diaper phase entirely. One moment, Zeus has a headache, the next, he's got a daughter with a battle cry and perfect posture. According to mainstream myth, she sprang out armed and ready to deliver a TED Talk on discipline. Some say she was his favorite child. Others say she simply didn't tolerate favoritism. Either way, she had a throne on Olympus, a city named after her, and a reputation for being fair, but not especially forgiving. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Athena wasn't just a war goddess. That would have made her too obvious. She was more into the chess version of conflict. Calculated, logical, always 10 moves ahead. But she also adored craftsmanship, especially weaving, embroidery, and spinning. Imagine the goddess of war unwinding with a skein of indigo-dyed wool, sipping tea, and cross-stitching a Trojan battle scene while muttering, "Honestly, if they'd flanked left." Historians still argue whether Athena's obsession with domestic crafts made her more relatable to women of the ancient world or simply turned her into a symbol of patriarchal ideals dressed in bronze. To some, she was empowering, a goddess who broke gender roles. To others, she enforced them by expecting women to be both wise and obedient, skilled yet silent. Athena also had a bit of a track record when it came to turning people into other things. There's Medusa, who got snake hair and a reputation for petrifying dates, and Actaeon, who saw a bit too much and ended up as a stag snack. The point is, when Athena gets upset, she doesn't just leave a bad Yelp review. She rewrites your entire biological makeup. Still, she wasn't cruel for the sake of it. Most of her wrath had rules. You break them, you deal with the consequences. And one of the unspoken rules? Don't claim you're better than a goddess. Especially not at her thing. Especially not if her thing involves skill, pride, and a certain amount of divine vanity. And double, especially not if you're mortal. Because as far as the gods are concerned, mortals are basically soft, soggy mascots walking around acting like they invented agriculture. But back to Athena's vibe. Her symbols include the owl, wisdom, the olive tree, peace and practicality, and the aegis, a magical shield with Medusa's head stuck on it like the world's most extra decal. In artwork, she's never giggling in the background or fawning over poetry. She's always front and center, helmet tilted just so, cloak rippling in a non-existent breeze. She's strategy. She's control. She's a high-powered, sharp-edged aura in goddess form. And she's definitely not the type to take shade from a teenage girl with good hand-eye coordination. You picture her pacing Olympus now, boots clicking against marble, as one of her sacred owls flutters nearby carrying reports. Not battle updates. Gossip. "Arachne," Athena says, squinting. Who? The owl hoots twice. She said what? Athena pauses. Her eye twitches. She doesn't immediately smite people. That's more of Zeus's hobby. Instead, she gets thoughtful. Her kind of revenge comes in the form of ironies, lessons, teachable moments that end in lifelong curses. And right now, she's planning one. You can practically hear the weaving of fate tightening, threads humming in tension. There's also an awkward little detail here. Arachne wasn't even claiming to be a goddess. She just refused to give credit to one. When people said, "You must be blessed by Athena," she said, "Nope, just talent." Which, to be fair, is the ancient Greek equivalent of someone today winning a Grammy and saying, "Actually, I don't believe in musical influences." Now, we can't ignore the politics of Olympus either. Athena's got an image to protect. She's a brand, a mythos, a literal city mascot. If mortals start thinking they're equals, what's next? Someone challenging Apollo to a poetry slam? A demigod critiquing Hera's marriage advice column? It's a slippery slope, and divine egos are notoriously fragile, despite being immortal. Arachne, of course, is blissfully unaware of this swirling celestial drama. She's at home, probably spinning golden thread into something unnecessarily gorgeous, whistling some folk tune while the village chickens peck outside. But overhead, the air thickens. The clouds bunch slightly. Somewhere in the heavens, Athena picks up her cloak. She's going to visit, but not in full divine regalia. No, that's too obvious. Instead, she chooses something more theatrical: disguise. A hunched old woman with a walking stick and eyes that seem to glow faintly from within the wrinkles. Because sometimes the gods prefer the long game. It's not about fire and lightning bolts. It's about walking into someone's home, pretending to be impressed, and delivering judgment in a low voice that echoes forever. You almost feel bad for Arachne. Almost. But remember, this isn't just a story about punishment. It's a story about pride. About how talent without humility can be both breathtaking and dangerous. It's about the ancient Greek idea that even excellence must bow to something greater, even if that greater is watching you through owl eyes while sipping ambrosia and planning your metaphorical unraveling. So go ahead. Glance up. The clouds are shifting. The goddess is coming. You wake to the sound of a loom, wood creaking gently, a shuttle tapping like a slow heartbeat. Arachne is already weaving, as usual. Morning light filters through the slats of her modest home, and you can smell the faint, dusty sweetness of carded wool. Outside, the village goes about its slow, predictable life. Someone's yelling at a goat. Someone else is trying to sell pears that are suspiciously soft. Nothing exciting happens here, except what Arachne does with thread. You sit beside her, cross-legged on a floor mat that still has a few sheep hairs embedded in it. She doesn't speak much. When she does, it's short and direct, like the snap of a taut thread. Pass the spindle. That pattern's off. Don't touch the dye. It stains forever. Charming, right? And yet there's something magnetic about her. That intensity. That absolute focus. She doesn't just weave pictures. She tells stories. A lion mid-roar, a goddess throwing a lightning bolt, a couple of mortals kissing under a fig tree, all stitched in silk. But if you want to understand Arachne, you have to understand what weaving meant in the ancient world. It wasn't just domestic work, it was the fabric of mythology itself, quite literally. Weaving wasn't only about making clothing, it was sacred, symbolic. The Moirai, or the Fates, wove human lives into their grand cosmic tapestry. To weave well was to echo the gods. Every thread was a prayer, every pattern, a story. And Arachne? She's better at it than anyone. It's not even close. Her images have movement, emotion. Her thread blends colors no one else has seen. People walk miles just to glimpse her latest piece. They talk about her like she's magic. She spun the sea, someone whispers at the local market. You could hear the waves in the cloth. There's a little room in her house where she stores the finished works, layers of folded fabric stacked high. You peek inside one afternoon and nearly gasp. There's a lion so lifelike it seems like it could pounce. A war scene with shields shimmering under phantom light. A dancer caught mid-spin, her skirt a blur of threaded motion. How do you even stitch motion? No one knows. Not even Arachne, maybe. That's the trick of genius. It works faster than it can explain itself. But the murmurings have started again. Not just about her skill, but her attitude. People say she's never made an offering to Athena, that she refuses to hang her work in the local temple. When asked who taught her, she shrugs. I taught myself, she says, not even looking up. And that hits differently in a world where every talent is supposed to be a divine gift. That kind of self credit doesn't go over well in polite, mythology heavy societies. One local priestess even scolds her directly. You should thank the goddess, she says, wagging a papyrus thin finger. Everything we have comes from her. Arachne just rolls her eyes and says, I don't see the goddess at my loom. That sentence alone could probably cause earthquakes. Historians still argue whether Arachne really existed or was simply invented as a morality tale. Some think she represents artistic rebellion, a mortal daring to challenge divine norms. Others say she was a warning to young girls: don't rise too fast, don't shine too brightly, and for the love of Olympus, don't make the gods jealous. Either way, the story caught on. You can almost feel the tension tightening around her like a net. Praise used to bring joy, but now it makes her stiffen. Even her mother looks nervous. Idmon no longer brags about her daughter's work. She quietly asks her to tone it down, maybe throw in a few scenes of Athena handing out laurels or saving soldiers. Arachne refuses. She's not about propaganda, she's about truth, and what she weaves is often unflattering. The gods, she thinks, don't always deserve their golden halos. You've seen some of her newer tapestries, ones she doesn't display yet. There's Zeus, disguised as a swan, tricking another girl. There's Poseidon, dragging a chariot through the sea while mortals flee in fear. Even Aphrodite is there, fuming over a mortal who dared to win a beauty contest. These are not bedtime stories. They're protests, stitched in silk. That morning, the sky feels unusually heavy. No clouds, just heat and silence. Even the birds stop their usual gossip. You look up, and that's when she arrives. Not Athena, not yet, but the visitor. An old woman, wrapped in layers of homespun wool, leaning on a crooked stick. Her sandals are ancient, the leather nearly melted to her feet. She walks with effort, but her eyes are sharp, too sharp. She watches Arachne work for a long time without saying anything. Arachne doesn't pause. She's used to visitors. They stare, they compliment, they leave. But this woman speaks, and her voice, it hums with a vibration you can't quite place, like it's echoing from inside the earth. Child, she says, your gift is rare, but are you not afraid to offend the gods? Arachne looks up, annoyed. Why should I be? I've never seen a god at the loom. The old woman nods slowly, like she's giving Arachne one last chance. Perhaps it is not wise to challenge those above you. And then, brace yourself, Arachne laughs. Not cruelly, not loudly, just amused. Let Athena come down herself. I'll challenge her to a contest. Let the threads speak. You can feel the air shift. The walls seem to tighten. Even the light changes, like it's being filtered through something ancient and unknowable. Then the old woman straightens. Her back stops creaking. Her cloak falls away. The wrinkles disappear like they were painted on. And standing there, no longer disguised, is Athena, her armor shimmering, her eyes like distant thunder, her expression unreadable. You do not breathe. Neither does Arachne. Well, the challenge has been made. Nobody. The room is still. No one moves. Even the loom seems to hold its breath. Athena stands tall now, no longer the hunched old woman, but fully herself. Gleaming armor, a polished shield slung across her back, and a spear that hums faintly like a tuning fork left too close to your head. The kind of presence that makes you forget about things like blinking or inhaling. Arachne, to her credit, doesn't faint or flee. She just sits there, one hand on the shuttle, the other still resting on the half-finished tapestry. Her mouth twitches, not in fear, but in something like challenge. Athena tilts her head, studying this mortal girl with a directness that would make most people melt into clay. You can practically hear the unspoken, eternal question between them. How dare you? But Arachne, she dares. You summoned me, Athena says, voice low and even, like wind right before a storm. You wish to test yourself against a goddess. Arachne nods once. I did. And that's it. No dramatic lightning bolt, no thunderclap, no Zeus crashing in, demanding they arm wrestle for entertainment. Just quiet agreement, and the hum of two looms already appearing out of nowhere, standing side by side like gladiators. The contest is on. It's a weaving competition, but not your grandma's knitting circle. This is art war. The kind of battle where each thread carries weight, every choice tells a story, and the loser might not walk away fully human. Athena steps forward first. She chooses threads like she's selecting warriors for a campaign, decisive, efficient, with zero hesitation. Her tapestry takes shape swiftly, Mount Olympus in golden glory. At its center, the gods in all their radiant perfection. You see Zeus on his throne, bolt in hand, Hera at his side, regal and aloof. Apollo, radiant with a lyre. Artemis, mid-stride with her silver bow. And of course, Athena herself, calm, wise, shield raised protectively over mortals below. The message is clear. The gods are powerful, benevolent, and not to be mocked. As she weaves, the room glows. You almost feel the warmth of sunlight coming off the cloth. The colors shimmer like real gold and deep ocean blue. Her craftsmanship is flawless. Not a single knot out of place, not a single thread twisted. It's divine perfection. It's almost boring in its flawlessness. A safe answer. A press release in silk. Then it's Arachne's turn. She doesn't say anything, just picks up her thread, fingers moving with ease like they've been waiting for this moment all her life. And then, oh boy, does she stir the pot. Her tapestry is beautiful, unquestionably so. But it's also provocative. She doesn't show Olympus at its best. She shows the gods behaving badly, really badly. There's Zeus transformed into a bull, carrying off Europa. Next to him, he's a swan again. This guy really loved cosplay. Charming Leda. Another panel shows Poseidon chasing after Medusa, not looking particularly heroic. Dionysus is surrounded by a party that definitely got out of hand. Hermes is laughing as he steals sacred cattle. Even Athena gets a nod, less flattering, more accurate. And the craftsmanship? Flawless. If anything, it might be better than Athena's. The shadows in Arachne's tapestry move like whispers. The expressions on the gods' faces are more human than divine, gleeful, cruel, distracted. You lean in and swear you can smell the sea in Poseidon's panel, or hear the screech of a distant eagle above Olympus. It's unsettling, but it's true and beautiful, which is the worst possible combination for Athena. Historians still argue whether Arachne's work was intended as satire, protest, or simply a reflection of myth as it really was. Some believe she meant to expose hypocrisy. Others think she was too bold for her own good. A few suggest she may not have meant offense at all, just told the truth too well. Athena watches as the tapestry finishes. Her face is perfectly calm. But you've read enough myths to know what that calm means. That's the I'm pretending I'm not furious calm. The I will smile while plotting your existential punishment calm. And yet, for a moment, it looks like she might actually walk away. She nods once, barely, and turns as if to leave. That's when you notice it, a single tremble in her left hand. Barely there, but it betrays the storm inside. She turns back, one swift motion, and then she raises her hand. The tapestry, Arachne's masterpiece, rips. Not with scissors, not with fire, just a gesture, and the threads begin to unravel. A slow, quiet unwinding, like the gods themselves are retracting the story. Arachne gasps. You flinch. And then Athena speaks. Her voice is low but brutal. Your work is perfect, but your pride is monstrous. Arachne opens her mouth, but no sound comes out. Then, in a move that feels halfway between mercy and punishment, Athena touches her forehead, and everything changes. At first, you think she's just fainting. Arachne's knees buckle, her hands grip her chest, her hair darkens, thinning, her skin shifts, gray, smooth, too smooth. Her fingers elongate, then split again. No. Oh no. You back away as her arms shrink and her legs dissolve into something thinner, more jointed, more many. You try to scream, but this is myth, and myth doesn't ask your permission to be horrifying. Arachne's face, once proud, once human, is now small, segmented, oddly delicate. Her eyes multiply, blinking in disorganized patterns. A web unfurls beneath her, seemingly spun from her own changing body. And then, just like that, she scuttles up into the rafters, silent, silver, and still weaving. Athena's voice echoes once more. You may keep your gift, but let it remind you forever. So yeah, that's why spiders weave webs, according to the ancient Greeks anyway. Not evolution, not biology, just divine punishment wrapped in artistry. And somewhere above, hidden in the shadows, a small spider spins endlessly, threads moving like sighs, its pride forever tangled in silk. So now you're just sitting there. The goddess is gone, the loom is quiet, and up in the rafters there's a spider. Not just any spider. Her, the girl who was too good at weaving for her own good. Arachne, now and forever hanging by a single strand, legs twitching in some slow-motion dance of despair and instinct. You can't help it. You shiver. And yet, it's kind of beautiful, too. Her web glints in the light, fine as mist and just as impossible to catch. Even in this form, she's still creating, still working. Athena took her voice, her hands, her very body, but not her skill. That, apparently, was too deeply embedded to remove. The gods can be dramatic, sure, but even they know a true artist when they see one. You watch for a while. There's something mesmerizing about it. The symmetry, the precision, the rhythm. She doesn't even seem angry anymore, just focused, just weaving. Out in the village, the rumors start almost immediately. Did you hear? Someone whispers at the well. She challenged Athena. Athena! Another nods solemnly. Serves her right, really. Mortals should know their place. Meanwhile, the more rebellious kids start sketching little spiders onto temple walls, smirking as they do it. You overhear a young girl ask her mother, "If I get too good at singing, will Artemis turn me into a bird?" Her mother doesn't answer. People forget quickly, though. Mortals have always had short mythic memories. Soon, it's just a cautionary tale told before bed. Don't boast, don't brag, and definitely don't go toe-to-toe with a goddess unless you're cool with having 8 legs and a lifelong weaving habit. But what's left behind is more than the story. It's the metaphor. Arachne, transformed into the very symbol of what she loved. And not just in one version of the myth. Across regions and retellings, the essence stays the same. A girl, a talent, a challenge, a punishment that sticks. Ancient poets loved this one. Ovid, that master of myth and drama, really leaned into it. He described Arachne's work with admiration, borderline jealousy if we're honest, and didn't shy away from calling Athena's response, well, petty. Historians still argue whether Ovid intended to critique the gods or just enjoyed poking at divine egos for sport. Either way, he gave Arachne a kind of literary immortality. And what's fascinating is how the symbol of the spider changes over time. In some cultures, it's creepy, a leggy omen lurking in the corner. But in others, it's revered. In West African folklore, Anansi is a spider trickster, clever and resourceful. In some Native American traditions, Spider-Woman is a protector and creator, weaving the world into being. Even in Japan, the Jorogumo is a mythical spider-woman who, okay, she sometimes eats people, but let's not focus on that right now. In the Greek context, though, the spider is always Arachne, always spinning, always remembered. You start noticing spiderwebs everywhere now, across trees, between fence posts, in the corners of your own room. Each one feels like a whispered reminder. And if you ever catch yourself bragging just a little too confidently about a craft or talent, guess what? That tickle on the back of your neck? Probably not a mosquito. One theory modern scholars toss around is that Arachne's transformation reflects societal anxiety about women with too much agency. She wasn't punished just for being good. She was punished for refusing to credit authority, for speaking truth, even beautifully, even accurately. It wasn't the art that got her in trouble. It was the honesty. But maybe, just maybe, that's what made the myth last. The gods often punished mortals who stepped out of line. But Arachne's story isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. A cursed transformation, sure, but not erasure, not obliteration. She still gets to do what she loves, just smaller, hairier, with more eyeballs. You picture her now, high in her shadowy corner. Maybe she remembers. Maybe she dreams. Maybe every spiral of silk is a retelling, a quiet protest, a masterpiece in miniature. You imagine her humming the same folk tune she did as a girl, tapping each thread into place with legs that used to be fingers. And Athena? She probably watches, not with anger anymore, not even regret. Just that same cool expression she always wears when mortals teach her something unexpected. You think back to the contest itself, the weaving, the boldness, the utter silence of the room afterward. The message from both women was clear. Art is power. Power comes with risk. And sometimes, the story continues long after the final thread is tied. There's an old proverb tucked away in some forgotten Greek scroll that says, "To weave is to remember." And Arachne? She remembers everything. In modern Greek, the word Arachne still means spider. Her name, her fate, quite literally woven into the language itself. You stretch out on a warm stone bench just outside Arachne's old house. The sun is setting. A spider web stretches delicately across the rim of a nearby jar. You watch it shimmer. One strand breaks in the breeze, then rewinds, a new thread replacing it like nothing happened. And in that moment, you realize this wasn't a defeat. Not really. It's a rerouting. She didn't stop weaving. She just changed shape. The sun slips lower behind the dusty hills, turning the whole sky peachy gold, and you stay where you are on that stone bench, arms folded behind your head, watching a spider dangle from the eaves above. You can almost imagine it's her, still, impossibly, working on a thread-thin tapestry that no human will ever see, yet which somehow holds more truth than all the marble statues and golden scrolls in the Acropolis combined. People come and go now, pausing under that web to whisper the old story. Tourists with sandals and sunburns, poets scribbling into tiny leather-bound notebooks, kids tossing pebbles, half scared the goddess is still lurking behind the next olive tree. And the myth? It keeps evolving. In some later versions, they say Athena had mercy on Arachne, that she transformed her out of pity, not punishment, that instead of condemning her to nothingness, she gave her a new life, a quiet one, a small one, but one where she could still do the thing she loved. Historians still argue whether that revision was born out of changing attitudes toward female creators, or whether storytellers just got squeamish over the idea of divine spite. Either way, the story softens over time, like all good legends do. You stretch again, still thinking. There's something oddly soothing about how consistent myths are about punishment. Like, if you're a woman with talent, you're either going to be turned into a tree, high Daphne, made to birth a monster, high Medusa, or turned into an animal with a poetic twist. Arachne was lucky, you suppose. She didn't get eaten, hunted, or married off to a sea god. She got to keep her thread, just not her thumbs. And yet, the tale persists. There's even an ancient Roman coin you once saw in a museum. It's faded now, but if you squint, you can make out a little figure, half woman, half spider, poised above a loom. Some think it was minted by a weaver's guild in the provinces. Others think it was just a mythic tribute, like having Pegasus on your stationery or Medusa on your shield. Either way, Arachne clearly made an impression. Speaking of looms, you wander back inside the house, her house, dusty now, quiet. The old loom is still there, though no one uses it anymore. It leans slightly to one side, and the last tapestry, never finished, still clings to the frame like a ghost refusing to move on. The threads have faded, but you can still make out a faint outline. A tree? Maybe? Or a lion? Or was it a goddess? Hard to say. The image won't sit still in your head. You run your fingers lightly along the frame, feeling the notches where threads once passed. It's like touching memory itself, thin, fragile, a little prickly. You half expect Athena to materialize again, armored and scowling. But tonight, she's busy, probably polishing her shield or hosting a council on Mount Olympus about how to rebrand divine punishment as constructive transformation. Instead, you sit by the loom and close your eyes. And in the silence, you can almost hear it. The rhythmic pull of thread, the gentle knock of the shuttle, the soft breath of someone lost in the act of creation. You imagine Arachne there, weaving not for praise or defiance, but just because it's what she is. Just like spiders don't web for applause. They do it because it's the only language they know. Later, as the moon rises, you step outside again. The village is mostly asleep, the air cool and buzzing with the tiny wings of nocturnal things. Somewhere nearby, a lyre plays a half-forgotten melody. You follow the sound, because of course you do, and find yourself at the edge of a small gathering. A storyteller is holding court under a fig tree, kids sprawled in the grass, a few parents pretending not to listen while clearly hanging on every word. The storyteller is describing the contest, Athena's pride, Arachne's arrogance, the beauty of the tapestries. But the details are different now. Arachne's cloth in this version shows mortals rising to greatness, daring to question the old ways. Athena, rather than enraged, is impressed. She smiles. She praises the mortal's courage. And so, the storyteller says, she gave the girl a gift, the patience and skill to weave forever, even in the tiniest spaces. The kids ooh quietly. One of them leans toward her friend and whispers, "I saw a spider yesterday in my shoes. I think it was her." The friend nods solemnly, like that makes total sense. It's strange, isn't it? How myths soften in the retelling. The harshness gets sanded down. The monsters become misunderstood. The gods become flawed. The mortals, they become symbols, over and over. You walk back home with that idea still swirling in your head. Arachne didn't just become a spider. She became a story. And stories are stubborn. Maybe that's her true revenge. Even today, her name is everywhere, hiding in plain sight. Arachnid, of course. Arachnean. Even in your science textbooks, her legacy is there, wrapped in Latin, quietly crawling across the margins. You once heard a biologist joke that spiders are nature's weavers, and that Arachne would have made a fantastic textile engineer. A niche joke, sure, but oddly comforting. And isn't that what myths do best? Reassure us that even the wrong turns, the humiliations, the transformations, they're not endings, they're new forms, continuations. You lie back on your straw-stuffed mattress, staring at the dark ceiling beams. Somewhere up there, a web shimmers. She's still at it, still weaving, maybe even watching. You think of all the other girls in old myths who didn't get that second act, the ones who vanished or fell or faded. Arachne, at least, spun her own fate, literally, and kept spinning long after the gods turned their backs. You smile a little, then drift, and the web above you sways gently, as if in time with your breath. The next morning begins slowly, the way mornings do in ancient stories. Rosy-fingered dawn creeping over hills, sleepy goats complaining in the distance, and a breeze that smells faintly of thyme and gossip. You wake to sunlight angling through the shutters, casting little web-shaped shadows across the floor. Coincidence? Maybe. But after last night, you're not exactly in a debunking mood. Outside, the village is bustling with the kind of everyday activity that would never make it into a heroic epic. Market stalls creak open. Potters shape wet clay with fingers that probably haven't heard of gods or curses. Fishermen argue good-naturedly about nets. But tucked between the bustle, you catch little references. Quiet, casual, almost reverent. She weaves like Arachne, someone murmurs about a young girl spinning flax with nimble fingers. Or from a merchant haggling over wool. That pattern's too perfect. It must have been done by a spider. Even the older folks seem to believe the story without question, like it's not just myth, but memory. A shepherd leans on his staff and points at a dew-laced web stretched across two fence posts. See that? You know who made that. Same girl. Still hasn't quit. What's strange is how no one says her name with fear. Not like Medusa, who turns your face into a lawn ornament. Not like the Furies, who show up when you skip jury duty on Mount Olympus. No, Arachne is spoken of the way you might mention an old neighbor who went away but still sends postcards in the form of oddly perfect lace across your window screen. You wander past an old weaver's stall. Her loom creaks gently as she hums something that's older than the alphabet, and you can't help but notice the motif woven into the edge of her shawl. 8-legged figures dancing in a spiral, like spiders throwing a very formal tea party. You point to it and she winks. Arachne watches over us, she says, and she judges dropped stitches. Still, even in this sleepy town, not everyone agrees on the details. Her punishment was just, a stern-faced priest says when you ask. She defied the gods. Arrogance must be humbled. But wasn't it truth she wove, you ask? He shrugs, frowning. That's worse. Historians still argue whether this myth was ever meant to be a literal cautionary tale, or if it was a more abstract parable about the tension between power and talent, between truth and the comfort of official stories. Was Arachne a rebel, a martyr, or just someone with too much ambition and not enough diplomacy? You walk past a small shrine tucked between buildings and pause when you see something odd. Not flowers, not coins, but bundles of thread, tiny spindles, even 1 or 2 buttons, all offered neatly beneath a carved relief of a woman mid-weave, her eyes cast upward as if daring the heavens to critique her design. You're not in Olympus anymore, but the echoes are everywhere. Further down the road, a traveling bard strums a lyre and sings a version of the myth that's new to you. In his telling, Arachne wasn't punished at all. She won. The goddess saw her tapestry, dropped up her loom in defeat, and fled in embarrassment. The spider form, the bard insists with a grin, was her reward. Immortality, silk, and a private studio with 8 nimble arms. The audience laughs, but a few older villagers frown, whispering that this version is disrespectful, that mocking gods, even in song, is a good way to wake up cursed. Still, the kids seem delighted. One girl draws a spider in the dust with a stick, giving it a little crown. That night, you camp by a creek under the stars. The water chatters beside you like it has opinions. Overhead, the constellations shimmer. You spot Aries, Taurus, and, if you squint hard enough, the one some say is Arachne herself, caught mid-descent, a celestial spider dangling on a silver thread. Some say that constellation was named Arachnus, though it never made it into the official Greek zodiac. Too subversive, maybe. Or too domestic. You know how myths favor warriors over weavers. There's something beautiful about the idea, though, that even the sky couldn't forget her, that she's up there now, just out of reach, still spinning. You lie back on your blanket, fingers laced behind your head, and wonder how many other stories were like hers. Not the ones polished by bards and bronze plaques, but the quiet rebellions. The women who didn't fight monsters but patterns, who didn't want to rule or destroy or marry a god. They just wanted to make something true. And maybe that's why her myth lingers so stubbornly. Because even today, in every perfect spiral of thread or story or shimmering silk, there's a whisper of defiance. That the truth, even when unflattering, can be its own kind of offering. That art, when it's honest, is dangerous, and that some creations are worth a little punishment. You close your eyes as the stars pulse above, one after another, like threads pulled across the velvet sky. The sun filters softly through your window, carrying the faint scent of olive groves and dust as you find yourself once again immersed in the ever-unfolding tapestry of Arachne's story. You might expect this ancient myth to have settled into a neat, unchanging shape by now, but it's far more like a living thing, threading through centuries, tangled and frayed in some places, bright and sharp in others. You recall reading somewhere that the weaving arts were deeply respected in ancient Greece, not just a way to make clothes, but a sacred act tied to fate itself. The Moirai, or Fates, spun and cut the threads of human lives, a cosmic loom operating just beyond mortal sight. Weaving wasn't mere craft, it was metaphor for control, destiny, and even divine will. So it makes sense that Athena, goddess of wisdom and craft, would be so invested in it. But what is less clear, and what scholars still debate, is whether her challenge to Arachne was meant to be a lesson in humility, a jealous power play, or something more complex. A clash between mortal creativity and divine prerogative. In some of the oldest sources, like Ovid's Metamorphoses, Athena's anger is fierce and swift. The goddess can't bear to be outdone by a mortal, especially one so bold as to weave images of the god's faults. But other versions hint at grudging admiration. Maybe Athena saw in Arachne a kindred spirit, a talented artisan who simply pushed the boundaries too far. You wander the market again, where the daily rhythms of life unfold in slow motion. The crunch of bread crust, the clink of coins, the murmur of gossip. There's a stall with dyed wool, the colors brilliant and earthy. A weaver nearby laughs about an old superstition that if you spin a web at night, the spiders will bless your work with extra strength. You decide to test that theory later, carefully leaving a ball of yarn by the window. One particularly quirky tidbit from the archives you recall is that some ancient Greeks believed spiders were the souls of women who died with unfinished work. That idea somehow fits the mood of the myth perfectly. It's a delicate reminder that Arachne's story isn't just about divine wrath, but the human longing to create something lasting, even when the world pushes back. You think about the spider itself, so tiny yet so formidable, capable of catching things many times its size with nothing but a silk thread. Spiders have been around for at least 380 million years, long before humans wandered the earth, silently perfecting their craft. It's no wonder they were woven into myth and metaphor. And then there's the practical side. Spider silk is one of nature's most remarkable materials. Ancient peoples observed its strength and flexibility, but couldn't quite harness it. In fact, some Victorian scientists tried to collect spider silk to create fabric. Imagine a spider web dress, delicate yet durable enough for high society. They never quite succeeded, but the attempt speaks to how humans have long admired the spider's natural artistry. Historians still argue whether Arachne's myth was primarily a warning about hubris or a subtle tribute to female skill and independence in a male-dominated society. The story has been used both ways, sometimes to shame ambitious women, other times to celebrate the creative spirit that refuses to be subdued. As you trace a finger along a rough-hewn wooden table, you can't help but feel the myth's threads weaving into your own thoughts about power, creativity, and the risks of challenging the status quo. You sip some cool water, the liquid smooth and grounding. Outside, a breeze stirs the leaves, and for a moment, you swear you hear the faint tapping of 8 tiny legs somewhere near the window pane. You smile, settling deeper into the quiet contemplation of a story that's much more than a myth. It's a mirror, a riddle, and a gentle reminder that sometimes the smallest creatures hold the biggest truths. You wander now into the realm of the myth's aftermath, the quieter moments after the whirlwind of gods and mortals has settled into memory. Arachne, transformed into a spider, isn't just a cautionary figure. She becomes a symbol that spiders are both creators and survivors. Imagine the shock of ancient listeners when told that a woman's defiance could literally spin her into a new form of life, one that thrives in shadows, crafting intricate homes out of nothing but silk. In the Greek world, spiders were often associated with skill and fate. They weren't just creepy crawlies, they were miniature weavers of destiny. Some even believed that watching a spider's web gave insight into the future, as the patterns mirrored the threads of one's own life. You can almost picture a quiet hearth where a grandmother watches a spider's web, telling stories about Arachne as her grandchildren listen with wide eyes, the myth blending gently with the everyday. This spider transformation myth has echoes beyond Greece, too. Various cultures have spider deities or trickster figures, like Anansi in West African folklore, a clever spider who outwits gods and humans alike. It's intriguing to consider whether these stories share a common root or simply reflect humanity's shared fascination with spiders. Historians still debate whether the Greek Arachne myth influenced these other traditions, or if it developed independently as a universal symbol of cunning and creation. You might be surprised to learn that spiders have played odd roles in medicine and superstition throughout history. In some European folk remedies, crushed spiders were thought to cure toothaches or warts. Elsewhere, spider webs were used as bandages because their natural silk contains antiseptic properties. It's a strange but comforting thought. Spiders, often seen as pests, quietly helping heal human wounds. Imagine now the daily life of someone in ancient Greece, living just on the edge of myth and reality. The clatter of pots, the hum of looms, the distant bleating of sheep. In the shadows, spiders spin their webs, perhaps as a subtle tribute to Arachne's enduring spirit. Every silky thread a whisper of a story, a challenge, a small rebellion woven into the fabric of time. You catch yourself wondering, did ancient artisans see spiders as friendly muses or just pesky nuisances? Probably both. After all, weaving was a demanding craft, requiring patience and precision. Spiders, relentless and tireless, might have seemed like kindred spirits, or maybe just reminders of the delicate balance between creation and destruction. You glance outside and notice a web glistening with dew, suspended like a fragile jewel in the morning sun. It's a perfect natural tapestry, one that would make even Athena pause to admire. And in that moment, you realize why Arachne's myth still spins its way into our stories. Because it's not just about punishment or pride, it's about the beauty found in persistence, skill, and the quiet power of transformation. As you drift deeper into the fabric of Arachne's tale, you find yourself in a quiet corner of ancient Athens, where everyday life hums along with the weight of gods just barely out of sight. Here, weaving isn't just a mythic metaphor, it's a real craft, one that shapes social status, family honor, and even political power. Women's work in the loom room was central to the household economy. A well-woven cloak or finely embroidered peplos could mark a family's wealth and standing. Some historians still argue whether these textiles were purely utilitarian or if they carried secret messages and coded stories, woven political commentary, perhaps, or clever nods to forbidden truths. And so Arachne's defiance is doubly powerful. She's not just showing off a skill, she's taking on the invisible, cultural threads that keep society neat and orderly. Her tapestry didn't just depict gods behaving badly, it exposed the very human flaws beneath divine facades. Imagine the quiet shock of a household matron sipping watered wine, realizing that the stories woven into fabric might question everything she's been told. You can almost hear the quiet murmur of voices debating the story in the marketplace. Was Arachne a troublemaker or a truth teller? A foolish girl or a fearless artist? Opinions vary as widely as the colors on a dyer's wheel. It's also worth noting that ancient Greek looms were marvels of technology. Simple, yes, but ingeniously efficient. You probably wouldn't want to try weaving a full tapestry without one, unless you enjoy hours of tangled yarn and frustration. The process was slow, demanding patience equal to Athena's judgment. It's a reminder that skill and time were gifts, not guarantees. Interestingly, weaving often intersected with storytelling and memory. Some cultures still use textile patterns as mnemonic devices, encoding histories or even genealogies into fabric. Could Arachne's tapestry have been one of the earliest texts challenging official histories? Scholars still argue whether her myth reflects this idea or is simply a fanciful tale to warn against pride. As you stroll past a stand selling fragrant herbs and dyes, you smell madder root and saffron, ancient ingredients used to create brilliant reds and yellows for cloth. You imagine Arachne mixing pigments, dipping her threads into glowing colors as if painting with silk. Then there's the curious fact that in some versions of the myth, the images on Arachne's tapestry weren't just scenes of gods' flaws. They included mortals tricking gods and gods being humbled themselves. Such stories don't quite fit the usual heroic narratives where gods are untouchable. Instead, they offer a nuanced, almost satirical view of divinity. You laugh softly, picturing Athena's face as she sees her own blunders woven into a tapestry, and then that quick shift to divine wrath. It's like watching a professor caught doodling cartoons of the dean. Funny until you realize you're about to get expelled. In the end, Arachne's story captures something timeless: the struggle between authority and creativity, between control and freedom. It's the same tension you feel when you try to bend a story to your will, only to have it slip through your fingers like silk. Outside, a breeze flutters a curtain, and you catch a glimpse of a delicate web, swaying gently like a lullaby. The afternoon sun dims softly as you imagine the moment of transformation, Arachne becoming the very spider she once challenged the gods to imitate. This turning point isn't just a dramatic twist, it's a profound change, echoing through art, culture, and the very way we think about myth. You picture the scene: Athena, her eyes flashing with divine power, reaching out to alter Arachne's form, not to erase her talent, but to preserve it in a new, eternal shape. The goddess doesn't destroy the girl's skill, she reassigns it, a cruel kind of respect. Arachne will weave forever, but as a creature small enough to avoid human judgment, forever suspended between admiration and exile. This transformation into a spider mirrors ancient Greek beliefs about metamorphosis as a form of punishment or escape. The gods frequently changed humans into animals, plants, or stars to express complex messages about morality, power, and fate. You might be surprised to learn that metamorphosis myths were so common that they became a sort of genre, inviting listeners to reflect on the fluid boundaries between forms and identities. A fascinating fringe detail is how later artists and writers took this spider metamorphosis literally, sometimes depicting spiders with human features or weaving mythical scenes into actual spider webs. These artistic experiments underscore how enduring and flexible the myth was, a story that could stretch and spin in endless directions. Historians still debate whether the myth's final message is about humility before the gods or an early feminist statement about female agency and creativity. Was Athena punishing Arachne for overstepping, or was the story a coded nod to women's struggle for recognition in a patriarchal world? Both readings have passionate advocates. You pause to consider how the spider itself has taken on many symbolic meanings beyond Greece, a symbol of patience, cunning, and feminine creativity across cultures. In Native American traditions, for example, the spider is often a teacher and storyteller, spinning webs that connect worlds. Back in the Athenian agora, you overhear a vendor discussing a newly discovered vase painting, showing a spider with a woman's face, an intriguing example of how myth and daily life intertwined. It makes you realize how closely people in antiquity identified with these stories, using them to make sense of their world. Meanwhile, the science of spiders today reveals even more wonders. Spider silk is stronger than steel by weight and incredibly flexible, properties that ancient Greeks could only marvel at. Modern biomimicry research is trying to replicate spider silk for medical and engineering uses, proving that Arachne's legacy is still very much alive in the most literal sense. You sip your tea slowly, the warmth settling in your chest, as you reflect on how this ancient myth continues to weave its threads through history, culture, and science, reminding us that sometimes being transformed isn't the end, it's a new beginning. The evening deepens, and your mind drifts to the rich visual culture that grew around Arachne's story. vases, mosaics, and frescoes that captured moments of divine contest and mortal daring. These artworks weren't just decoration, they were stories told in pigment and clay, a way for people to see themselves and their gods in the same space. One famous example is a red figure vase from the 5th century BCE, showing Athena and Arachne poised at their looms, the tension between them palpable in every line and shadow. The expressions are subtle. Athena's calm but commanding, Arachne's confident, maybe even a little smug. You can almost hear the whisper of the threads and the hush of a crowd watching this silent contest. But here's a quirky fact you might not expect. Some depictions show Arachne's tapestry containing images of the god's scandalous exploits, from Zeus's many disguises to the humorous yet awkward tales of Hera's jealousy. It's as if the artists themselves were in on the joke, teasing the powerful while honoring the craft. You imagine ancient viewers chuckling quietly, sharing knowing glances, and perhaps feeling a bit rebellious themselves. It's a reminder that myths were not static, but evolving stories, shaped by the culture that told them. Historians still debate whether the myth's popularity was driven more by its entertainment value or its moral lessons. Was it a way to teach humility, or did it subtly encourage questioning authority? The answers likely depend on who's telling the story and when. Beyond the arts, Arachne's myth influenced language itself. The word arachnid comes directly from her name, linking spiders forever to their mythic ancestor. It's a curious legacy. Imagine introducing yourself as arachnid in a crowded room. You'd probably get some odd looks. The spider's presence in everyday Greek life was more than metaphorical. Spiders often appeared in children's games, folk tales, and even practical wisdom about patience and perseverance. You might remember the saying, "Spin your thread with care, for it may hold your fate." Such proverbs remind us how deeply these stories wove into daily experience. You find yourself humming softly, as if weaving your own mental tapestry from the threads of myth, history, and life. Outside, the twilight deepens, and the faint clicking of a spider's legs provides an oddly soothing rhythm. Even today, the story invites us to consider the tension between human ambition and divine order, between creative freedom and the limits set by society. It's a gentle but persistent reminder that every thread, no matter how small, contributes to the greater whole. Night settles in fully now, and your thoughts turn to the lesser-known figures intertwined with Arachne's myth, those supporting characters and side stories that add surprising depth to the main narrative. For example, there's the figure of Niobe, whose own tragic tale echoes themes of pride and punishment, adding a somber note to the tapestry of Greek myth. Niobe, Queen of Thebes, boasted about her many children, only to lose them to divine retribution, much like Arachne faced consequences for her hubris. The parallels invite you to wonder whether the Greeks used these stories as cautionary counterpoints or as reflections of human frailty and resilience. Historians still argue whether these myths were originally independent or parts of a larger, interconnected moral framework. You also glimpse the minor characters like the townsfolk who witnessed Arachne's contest, their reactions ranging from awe to horror. Imagine them whispering in the marketplace, debating the fairness of the gods and the fate of the bold mortal girl. These voices, though often silent in surviving texts, hint at the popular reception of such myths, stories meant to be lived, not just heard once. Meanwhile, some artistic interpretations bring in other gods like Hermes, who may have acted as a messenger or mediator in variations of the tale, subtly shifting the story's tone from tragedy to comic relief. His presence reminds you how Greek myths are rarely fixed, often shaped by different storytellers to suit different moods or audiences. Curiously, spider symbolism extends into everyday superstitions. For instance, in some Mediterranean traditions, a spider seen spinning its web indoors was considered a sign of good luck or forthcoming guests. It's a gentle contrast to the fear or disgust spiders often inspire today. A fun, quirky fact: the ancient Greeks sometimes believed that spider webs could capture souls or carry prayers to the gods, a spiritual form of weaving beyond the physical craft. This notion adds a mystical layer to Arachne's transformation, linking it to ideas about life, death, and rebirth. As you reflect, it's clear that Arachne's story is not just about a single moment of divine punishment, but part of a broader cultural conversation about creativity, risk, and the cost of challenging the established order. You lean back, feeling the quiet weight of countless threads, mythic, cultural, and personal, all woven together, inviting you to settle into the peaceful hum of stories told and retold through the ages. The night deepens further, and you find yourself drifting through the fascinating ripple effects of Arachne's myth across time and culture. This story, originally rooted in ancient Greece, has spun threads far beyond its origins into Renaissance paintings, Victorian literature, and even modern pop culture. Consider how artists like Diego Velázquez and later illustrators of classical myths depicted Arachne's contest and transformation. They often emphasized the tension between mortal pride and divine authority, capturing the drama in rich colors and fine detail. These works remind you that mythology isn't just ancient dust, it's a living canvas, constantly reinterpreted to reflect the values and anxieties of different eras. You might be amused to know that in Victorian England, spiders were sometimes used as metaphors for industriousness and creativity in poetry and prose, a gentler twist on Arachne's story. And in some early children's books, Arachne's tale was retold with an added moral about humility and kindness, reflecting Victorian sensibilities. Meanwhile, in the 20th and 21st centuries, the myth inspired everything from graphic novels to films. Spider women appear as symbols of empowerment, mystery, or sometimes eerie menace, blending ancient storytelling with modern themes. The tension between punishment and praise in Arachne's story resonates with ongoing conversations about creativity, identity, and rebellion. Historians still debate whether these reinterpretations honor the original myth's spirit or reshape it to fit contemporary ideals. That debate itself shows how alive and adaptable these stories are. Never fixed, always spinning new threads. And here's a quirky detail. The word arachnophobia, meaning fear of spiders, wasn't coined until the 20th century, long after the myth had established spiders as crafty and skillful creatures. It's curious how cultural attitudes towards spiders have shifted from admiration to fear over time. You imagine sitting in a cozy room, a flickering candle casting shadows, while someone reads aloud a modern retelling of Arachne's tale, melding ancient threads with today's storytelling fabric. It's a reminder that these myths, much like spiderwebs, connect us across centuries. The delicate balance between admiration and fear, punishment and respect, remains as relevant as ever, whispering quietly as you prepare to rest. As your eyelids grow heavy, you settle into the final moments of Arachne's story, feeling the gentle weight of myth weaving you closer to sleep. The spider's web shimmers faintly in the moonlight, delicate yet strong, an apt metaphor for how stories carry us through time, fragile and enduring all at once. You reflect on how Arachne's tale, at its core, is about the dance between creativity and consequence, ambition and humility. It reminds you that every great artist, every storyteller, spins their own web, sometimes admired, sometimes misunderstood, often tangled in the expectations of others. The quiet buzzing of night insects drifts through the air as you imagine ancient listeners gathering around fires, sharing this story not just as a warning, but as a celebration of skill, wit, and resilience. The story's threads stretch across cultures and centuries, connecting you now to voices long past. There's a soothing rhythm in this, a slow unfolding, much like the patient weaving of a web or the careful stitching of a tapestry. You might even feel, as you drift, that you are part of this weaving, adding your own silent thread to the vast fabric of human imagination. Remember, too, the curious details sprinkled through the tale. The vivid dyes of Arachne's loom, the whispered debates among scholars, the shifting meanings of spiders in different cultures. All of which remind us how rich and layered even the simplest stories can be. As your breath slows and the story's gentle cadence lulls you closer to dreams, know that Arachne's legacy is not just about a girl turned spider, but about the enduring power of stories themselves, woven from light, shadow, and the threads of human wonder. Now, let the quiet hum of the night carry you softly into rest, your mind cradled by myth, your heart warmed by the soft glow of ancient tales. Wind down. You're safe here, wrapped in the calm, slow rhythm of this story's ending. The web's threads shimmer faintly in your mind's eye, delicate but unbreakable, like the quiet bond between storyteller and listener. Your thoughts gently untangle as you sink deeper into comfort, each breath a soft thread pulling you toward rest. The world around you fades softly into a warm twilight. Imagine the gentle flutter of a spider's legs, the whisper of ancient looms spinning under a forgiving moon. The air cools, soothing and steady, like a lullaby from ages past. There's no rush here, just the steady unfolding of time, the peaceful weaving of silence and story. You're carried not by force, but by gentle invitation, drifting along a quiet river of myth, where every detail glows softly and every moment invites rest. As your mind quiets and the last strands of wakefulness unravel, feel the comforting embrace of stories that have traveled through centuries, now cradling you close. The spider's web, the goddess's loom, the mortal's daring, all blend into one slow, timeless breath. Sleep well, wrapped in the tender folds of myth and memory, as dreams spin softly just beyond the veil. End of script. Sweet dreams.